Good morning, good evening, whatever it
You
is for
used the
you.
word good twice there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, welcome to Speed City F1, and we're going to get you ready for the Chinese Grand Prix because 2 weeks on from Japan, Formula One remains in Asia.
Ni hao.
Just a short hop across the East China Sea, visited Shanghai for the first time since 2019 for the Chinese Grand Prix. And this is John Massengale, and joining me in the studios here in Austin, Texas, is the legendary Jonathan Green. Jonathan,
Depends what you're legendary for. Yeah.
are you caffeinated and ready to get everybody
I
excited?
am.
Oh no!
Oh, mayhem! I am adequately caffeinated. I will make it till at least 3.
Which time zone?
But I've only got the soft compounds, so I may struggle towards the end of the race.
All right, and connecting with us from his home studio in the UK is one of the most popular Formula One journalists in the world, Chris Medland. You look bright-eyed and ready to start your morning at the UK. What is it, 7, 8 a.m., Chris?
7 a.m. guys, which is a beautiful
Oh, that's
time.
actually not bad. I was about to say.
Yeah, much more of a struggle earlier in the week with media sessions and then like FP1 and the sprint. Like they were, middle of the night, darkness.
I still.
And as regular listeners will know, my wife produces these races, so she's been getting up at like 11:30 or midnight to go to work.
Do you have a reoccurring
really
dream where you are so successful because you're so good looking that you end up being produced by your wife alongside Lawrence Beretta and Will Buxton, and she's playing hard time with you?
Oh, Buxton's long gone, isn't he? He's the old guard now. We're talking about the new generation.
That's correct.
No, I'm joking. But no, I dream of that she's so successful I don't have to work, and
That's even better.
This time, listening to you guys and just watching it, and then being like, now what do I do with my day? That's I go and play some golf or something. That's the long term aim. But I was working out actually because I was at the last Chinese Grand Prix. I was at all of them from 2014 to 2019.
Wow,
not there this year. But yeah, it's been a full decade of basically doing pretty much every race. Only COVID started to break it up with the odd race you wouldn't do, and now the calendar is so big, you pick and choose the odd one not to travel to just to give your body a break, which I needed. I will admit, if we were on air on Thursday or even Wednesday when John and I did the Wheel to Wheel show, I was a bit croaky. I was coming under the weather, so I needed the break. But 10 years solidly. I hit 200 races, I think, in Silverstone this year, which used to take people so long to do because the races were so few and far between compared to now. So
that's just one season, right?
Yeah, that's the long-term aim is to. Exactly, yeah. As soon as you've done your first couple of races, you hit that number.
On a serious point,
the
Chris.
long-term aim is the wife pays the bills.
On a serious point, I was listening to a discussion about just said thing, and honestly, don't you think it's getting ridiculous? I mean, there must be. They keep saying, "Oh, well, NASCAR has 32 races." It's like, yeah, but most of them are in Alabama. 24 is too many. I mean, 18 was palatable. 19 okay. 20's got to be the limit.
I think 20 was the sweet spot. Yeah, I think there's a few different reasons for it as well, because something like NASCAR is so much more unpredictable. It's so much more competitive in terms of the race win each week. Now, there's great stuff going on in F1, but when you've got one team dominating and then you tell everyone to tune in for 24 races at silly o'clock, back to back to back, and the effort that's going in, I think it can get a little bit draining. You add in things like sprint races, and that's one of my concerns actually this weekend is that I think this format is probably the best layout of timing and schedule of the sprint weekend, but there's always going to be a downside. Nothing's perfect, and I imagine a lot of people would have checked out yesterday's sprint with the grid looking so exciting, seen the outcome and such a big margin and gone, oh, that's that. And you've just completely deflated what's normally a build up to a Grand Prix. So I think that also starts to take its toll a bit as well. I know people out there on the ground, they don't have the same excitement today that they would have had if it had been yesterday, today, if you didn't have that knowledge of what the sprint showed you and the true race pace. So I know it's likely to go that way anyway, but just that bit of intrigue and bit of unknown is always helpful. So I think those things combining do make it tough.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I was upset, or not upset, that's the wrong one. But I find it hard to do a sprint weekend because of that jeopardy. You're up and down, you don't know who's where. You don't know whether to celebrate or not. I was excited for Joe to get a top 10, but he didn't get a top 10 finish with points. Magnussen would have had a point if he was 10th, but of course that was no good because there wasn't points for 10.
Yeah.
They have changed the rules, both Parc Fermé and sort of, if you like, having the qualifying and then the sprint race, then qualifying for the Grand Prix. That, from a point of view of making sense of the story, is easier. But I still agree with you. The jeopardy is over, and you will lose a lot of audience knowing that it was a 1-2. And that, again, if you look down for the qualifying list, Max Verstappen, 100th pole. Well, I'll give that one a miss. It's in the middle of the night. You're not, you and I remember, Medland, getting up in 96 because Damon could win the championship. And that was exciting. But those days are gone.
Yeah, and that was a time when, I know, say Damon can win the championship and listeners might go, oh yeah, but British driver, British people getting up for that. But that was against Jacques. That was a proper fight for the championship that nearly went to the wire. And obviously the previous years against Michael, there'd been battle and intrigue. It was rare to see it wrapped up so early in that period. Then you hit obviously the 2000s and Michael. And I think a lot of people would say, as a younger fan growing up, as amazing as it was to see Ferrari successful and Michael Schumacher, one of the greatest ever, if not the greatest ever, then being so good. But it was a bit of a turn-off, always knowing who was going to win then. And it's going to be the same for people now if they're not careful. And I think then, just bringing it back to where we started, when you have so many races and you condense the calendar so much and so many sprints to try and add excitement, but all you're doing is giving people more of the same result, essentially. I think actually it doesn't always do what it's intending to do. So fingers crossed, we made it look very stupid in about an hour's time and Max gets on the pole start or has an issue like he had in Melbourne and we have a race on our hands. But, right now I can't quite see it happening at this one. And I do think that in just having more and more races, the actual product isn't getting enough attention to just try and used to have more gaps meant people could bring upgrades more quickly or focus more on that. And that's been limited by cost caps. So you don't see the fluctuations in form as much either. And yeah, there's just little things that add up that I think are just making that make 24 potentially a bit beyond the limit.
It's interesting. We were just talking before we came on air, Chris, about Indy and how I still don't think Indy have got it right.
I felt like the season
they disappeared after Long Beach.
I really did. I was like, wow. For just a split second, I was like, where are we in the IndyCar season? I was like, it's not over, and I was like, that's ridiculous. But it just felt like it because they've been gone for so long.
You couldn't tell me who the top three are, though, could you?
No, I cannot.
There you go.
Yeah, but well, look, guys, let's get into the Chinese Grand Prix because it's been 2019 since we've had it. And Jonathan, you've been to this circuit. Chris, you have. You said you have. And Jonathan, you've been here. But let's talk about the history. And it is kind of cool to come back here.
Yeah, this is personally, and I've been watching all weekend. This is personally a bit of a triumph for me, having lived in Hong Kong and having watched Chinese motorsport, and especially the interest in Formula One, because I was doing Formula One at Star TV. They used to call it Wok TV. In other words, our satellite dishes look like woks. And I used to joke that, they don't really want TV. They just want their woks full of rice, really, so they can eat, because that was the joke. And here we are trying to take soccer and motorsport and whatever to this huge country and 50 countries across Asia. And to see, I was there at the groundbreaking at Zhuhai, for example, which is near Hong Kong. They built a circuit there. They tried to get homologated there. It didn't happen. They had some sports car races there. And I've been to many GT and Formula BMW races in Zhuhai. And so therefore to see Shanghai built and to see people like Ho Pin Tung doing the interviews and to see the proliferation of finally Zhou Guanyu, who I knew anyway, it is a wonderful thing to see. And to see those stands, more importantly, packed, because I've been there many a times and you can literally hear yourself whistle. It's a massive, massive complex. I just heard Jolyon Palmer saying, you get around the first corner and where all the crowd is, and then you've got 4 kilometers of nothing, no grandstands, no nothing. And because it's all congregated in the first corner and the last corner, or the last hairpin. I feel very proud that I was a part of, if you like, trying to promote Formula One in this part of the world back in the early 90s. And it's coming to fruition now, and I'm really glad for China. Just to hit the stat that stands out more than any is that over half of the Mercedes sold worldwide each and every year are in China.
Wow, I did not know that.
And they're only worth 18th. On the grid. Says the 6-time winner, Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah. Chris, you were putting your notes about this is a great track for racing, though.
It is, yeah. I mean, it's one of those that, as a new layout. I mean, it's an interesting place it was built on. I think it's old marshland, and it's
Hmm.
kind of the track sinks, and they keep having to reinforce it. I think it's polystyrene that's underneath to try and keep it floating, so that they've had to resurface it many a time. It does take a bit of attention, which has been a talking point this weekend in terms of grip levels and the bitumen kind of covering that they use to try and protect it. But as a layout, it's sensational actually. That first and second corner complex, just even on a qualifying lap is great to see because it looks so tricky to get right each and every time. But then in racing, it means you've got different lines that you can take through there. You can get drivers out of position. We saw it in the sprint with Sainz versus Alonso, the amount of times they were taking different lines through there. As Johnny mentioned as well, into the hairpin to the penultimate corner where the grandstands start up again. But that's a great overtaking spot. And there just seems to be something about, we saw a few easier overtakes in the sprint, but there does seem to be something about the layout where, because you've got such a long right-handed radius corner onto that straight, it's not so easy to stay close to someone. And it's not so easy to get it perfect out of there. And quite often, even though the straight is so long and the braking zone is so big, it does need doing on the brakes rather than just breezing past in a straight line. I also don't know if it's that maybe that the grandstands kind of protect the end of that straight a little bit so you don't get the influence of the wind so much that allows...
but we saw Hamilton caught out in qualifying on that very spot, right? With the wind behind him.
A tailwind, yeah. So a tailwind, I think you do really notice. When they say it's a headwind, I don't think it has quite the same impact, which means, if a car in front of you is punching a hole in the air, it's not doing it to quite the same degree it might on other straights that would give you such a big slipstream to just breeze past. So, yeah, we see some overtaking on the brakes there and some battling into that hairpin that works. They've done a really good job with it. I mean, we saw, again, Sainz and Alonso side by side through 7 and 8, the high-speed sweeping corners. There's so many places that racing is encouraged, basically. There's hardly any corners on this track where you don't see moves and you don't see the ability to go wheel to wheel. So I think they've done a great job in that sense of a layout that is good for the drivers as well, that often throws up exciting racing. And add in, a weekend like this where you've got a full crowd that's so excited about its home driver as well. And it does make for a pretty special atmosphere and a good event in that sense. It'd be great if this racing that's so exciting we're talking about was for P1 rather than for P2.
And, it's an impressive looking, the main grandstands with the cover and the big wing on top. It looks great. It's visually great for television, especially with all the stands.
Just on that, the wing as such, so the way that the grandstand extends over to the pit building, and you've got at each end of the grandstand building, you've got this kind of oval-shaped, almost like huge bridge, massively high up.
Yeah.
Well, one end of that, the end nearest to pit entry, so nearest the final corner, is the media center. So it's one of the coolest media centers in the world that you are sat above the track with a brilliant view.
And you can see
turn one or out the final corner. Yeah, you can see it all.
They have hospitality and the media center. So there's like a hospitality where you can have lunch, i.e. not for the media, but there's VIP hospitality and the media center. And as Chris says, it's amazing.
Well, we're watching some of the pictures.
Yeah.
Pictures, and the weather looks good.
Massive paddock.
Yeah,
it is enormous. Yeah, absolutely huge. And you get a bit lost in there normally. I think Formula One have done a good job this year, and this is very much an in Formula One issue rather than for fans watching on TV. But you'd walk around that paddock and it would feel so soulless because it was enormous. You could land a jumbo jet on the kind of concrete space that they've got behind the garages. This year they've put some things in there. They put some buildings, some activations, some. I think there's a bar in there for fans and guests that are in there, that sort of thing. But just to fill the space a bit more, because it was amazing. So obviously, Liberty Media were just in their second year when we last went to China. So the sport's evolved massively since 2019.
Yeah,
every paddock now is so much more alive and vibrant. Every race, I think, adds more to it for fans and kind of just has a better atmosphere in that sense, just a bit more of a fan focus rather than where you're showing up to watch some cars on track and then go home. And China's one that actually had this 5-year gap where there's a stark contrast then. It's not been a general evolution from 2019 to now.
Yeah.
It's in 2019, there was hardly anything there. And now much, much different because of all the learnings of the last 5 years. So that's quite interesting to see as well.
I was watching some of the television pictures and they were showing the crowd, and they could have been cherry picking, but there was lots of young people. And I was noticing it looked like a really young demographic. It was lots of, not just, parents with kids or whatever, but just like a young crowd, like mid-20s or early 30s.
Shanghai is 24 million people, and it's one of the most dynamic cities you could ever hope to go to. Very modern, and very historic as well. But in terms of skyscrapers, it blows Beijing out of the water. And it's a finance capital. It's always been a wealthy place. So the young and the opulent, that is, if you want to live in China and you want to, if you're not, Hong Kong's kind of died a bit. That's where I used to live. Shanghai is sort of Singapore currently. It's a high end banking capital, money capital. Make your fortune. And so, that doesn't surprise me, that demographic of young, upwardly mobile, middle class, etc.
Yeah, I haven't seen any actual stats. It just was a very anecdotal glance at the crowd, but it sure looked like it. All right, guys, let's get a quick break in. And when we come back, we'll continue our discussion about the Chinese Grand Prix, and we'll talk a little bit about qualifying and the sprint. You're listening to Speed City F1. Back after these messages. All right, we're still live on YouTube. Let's see if anybody's awake. TW's there. He's boogity, 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 he says. Kevin Kelly, pardon me, do you have the time? TW says it's 1 o'clock where he is. 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, my gosh. That's like Austin, Texas, and Thailand.
Oh, yeah, that's hot.
Wow. Let's see. Anybody else? Everybody else is still sleeping. We did get some folks on Twitter tweeting at us, going, they're up. Who was that? Papa Bear tweeted a picture of himself or his kid falling asleep, or a GIF. Karen Davis is up in Arkansas.
Kevin Kelly says WEC starts in 4.5 hours. Yay!
Yeah.
It's a good day of motorsport today if you
That's
can
true.
stay awake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching Long Beach. My son's team, the McLaren team, they crashed out, and it was their fault this time. They crashed out early.
But by the way, I've been following the. That's how sad a weekend it is. I've been following the China F4, and the next Joe, if you will, Gerard Cher. I met his parents and family at New Zealand, and he's a good kid from China coming up. And
is he inspired by Zhou Guanyu?
Yes. Yep, definitely.
That makes sense.
He's just a kid. He's raced in the UK in GB3. Like I said, did New Zealand, got a win in New Zealand. Dominates, or was dominating F4. I think he's ahead of that now, and I think he just went back to do, some F4. But good kid, and that's what you're looking for when you're looking for a country to start providing regular drivers and for growing the sport. You need the next one coming along.
Well, with the population pool, you would think they would start seeing some more of that after having Zhou Guanyu into F1 now.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Let's see. Anybody else out there? Not yet. Let's see. What do we got coming up? I want to talk about Zhou himself when we get back on the air.
Yep.
Here we go.
I've got some always good for radio photos to describe just off the back of it.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Speaking of Gunther Steiner, I caught up with him last weekend since we weren't on the air for F1. We were doing MotoGP, and he was in the paddock. And it was pretty cool to catch up, and we've got an interview out there we've got as a podcast, and we got it out on YouTube. Go to speedcitybroadcast.com to find all the places. But Chris, during the break, you said you had something that you want to talk about. There's kind of coming off the point that Jonathan was making about young possible drivers coming up from China.
Well, actually, no. The point you were making, John, about the fan base that you were seeing in Shanghai that you'd noticed from the TV shots, and it is true that it's a very young, uply mobile fan base that's there in China. They've got a lot of kind of that 20 to 40 kind of window of fan. But not only that, we give, I was in Japan 2 weeks ago, and we give a lot of credit and focus to the Japanese fans and how creative they are and all the special things they do. Well, I got sent a couple of photos from Lawrence Edmondson, who works for ESPN, who's been on some of our shows every now and then, who is one of the very few, bless him, that's made it to China for this weekend. And he sent some photos from the fan zone where he found one sign. A Ferrari fan had done this. So they're wearing Ferrari top, big red wig that they've got on, and they've made their own sign. and it's a picture of Daniel Ricciardo, and it's a lovely picture of Daniel. He's smiling. He's in his Visa Cash App RB overalls, like pre-season photo, and it's in Chinese, and underneath is in Japanese, in English, and it says, "Thank you and goodbye, Daniel."
Oh,
And in the other corner is a picture of that person themselves crying. So they're upset, but they've written Daniel Ricciardo off already. But even more creative than that was one where there was two Red Bull fans. At least one of them's definitely a Red Bull fan. They're in Red Bull gear. The other one has got the sign that they've made up from home. And it's the graphic from Team Radio, of Verstappen's Team Radio from Red Bull. And it just says, "Push, Max, push." But it's superimposed over a very young photo of what appears to be Max Verstappen sat on the toilet. So it's some toilet humor there, but it's very creative. These are the stuff that's coming in, and I just thought we don't think of China in this way, do we? Talk about the fans and how creative they get, but as Johnny was saying, when you've got a region that A has been waiting for 5 years to have a race again, but B has been building up to this and is kind of isolated from the rest of the Grand Prix calendar generally, then you do get a very fanatical fan base because they have to work very hard to be connected to the sport. So I just thought it was quite funny to let you know a couple of the photos from the fan zone.
Well, it doesn't sound like China, what you're saying. I think that's what, I think of it more kind of oppressed or something. Maybe that's
somebody's opened their fortune cookie that says Ricardo out.
Yeah. Well, we got to talk about Zhou Guanyu. We've touched on it.
I think, like you say, John, a bit.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go on ahead. Well, I was going to say it's a bit the delay that we've got here, UK to US. I do apologise, but the fact that, as you say, it's maybe a bit of an old school view, but as Johnny was saying, Shanghai is a very progressive city as well, and an open city. So I think maybe the whole COVID pandemic has set views of China back a little bit, compared to where it was getting to before then. So it is, it is a fun place to go. I can attest, or it certainly was up to 2019.
And when you go, like, Chris, I guess, when's the last time you've been? Was 2019, you said? And
that last Grand Prix we had there was my last visit.
And you feel safe and...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a fascinating place. And the Chinese kind of much maligned because we don't understand Chinese. Very few people do speak Chinese. But having lived in Hong Kong, which is China, for 6 years, I didn't. My Chinese wasn't much better. I could swear a bit, but they are a fascinating and industrious folk, and they are well worth. And plus their history with medicine and so on and so forth. You can't. It's a bit like the Japanese. They have their own culture, their own way of doing things, and as Chris says, they're somewhat insulated from the rest of the world, and that's lots of reasons, language being one, but also, flying across borders is not something the Chinese have done until the last 20 years. So, it's a really interesting place and a beautiful country.
Well, and I've said this, I think talked about this on Wheel to Wheel, Chris, but, communication, we talk about the conflicts between the U.S. and China, and maybe China and other places too, but communication is something that can always cure conflicts, right? I know this is kind of an idealistic view, but Formula One can do that, right?
Yep.
I mean, we're sitting here talking about the young people.
Common goal,
Yeah. So
enjoying sport.
Speaking of Shanghai, that's where Zhou Guanyu was born, right? He was born there, and it's pretty cool that he's the first Chinese driver ever to race at home, not only at home in China, but at his home. That's pretty cool.
Go on, Chris. You're about to say something else.
Sorry about the delay, Chris.
Oh, I was going to say it's certainly. It's certainly true. That's my fault. I'm the one who's picked to be on the wrong country today, haven't I? So apart from the time zone, but yeah, it certainly is true that it just opens, I think, to more people the reality of a country and what it's like. And it doesn't mean that everywhere everyone races is perfect by any stretch, but I think quite often it's very easy for us to think we have a view of somewhere when we haven't visited, and then we get to go to places and you get a better, more accurate view. Not always a positive one, but certainly with China, I have found it is. But yeah, there's certain other venues as well that maybe we're quick to judge, and you just get a different kind of understanding of these countries and maybe why they are the way they are, or whether certain things are true or not. So yeah, you're right. Communication and the fact that everyone goes to these places and opens up that potential is key. And something I must say, I get asked this a lot actually as well. We never really get like a briefing or asked not to say something or do something from any Grand Prix that we go to. We don't go to Saudi Arabia and get told, don't mention this, or don't go there, or don't look at that. none of it. Like as media, completely free in terms of what F1 says to us, what the race organisers say or don't say. Never get told anything. You land and up to you what you want to go and do. So
Yep.
generally, I feel like we have the opportunity at least to see an authentic view of these places, whether everyone takes that or not, or just, I'm quite guilty of quite often just going racetrack to hotel and focusing on work. But you do get the opportunity, which is very, very cool.
Fair point.
But anyway, as you were saying, like for Zhou, like going back to Shanghai and his home race, and just
so
this
cool.
whole weekend so far, you've seen the support for him is massive. I don't think everyone quite expected it when you're racing in a stake Sauber that looks like it's struggling to complete a pit stop and hasn't scored a point yet, and they're fanatical about him.
Yeah, they are. And you talk about a classic upbringing for Formula One. He left Shanghai at 8 and moved to Sheffield. Oh. Now, you may not know Sheffield, but Chris will chuckle along with me. It's very close to Whitby, actually. It's a bit of a juxtaposition, that. And so talk about dedicated to the cause. At 8 years old, he was racing karts in Sheffield and grew up in England. And so, he is dedicated to the cause. He left his culture completely.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know much about...
You'd have to say that Sheffield is probably most like Pittsburgh.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, basically. It's the knife capital of the world.
Steel City.
Steel City.
Well, you know what? We have a clip of Zhou Guanyu after qualifying. We'll talk about qualifying and sprint here in just a second. But since we're talking about Zhou, let's hear from him. And this was right after his qualifying yesterday.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. Of course, then I wasn't surprised because I locked up into turn 14. I think several drivers did the same, and I was one of them, unfortunately. But yeah, that was kind of the lap for Q2. More than 2 times I lost in that, and found it quite tricky. Wind changed, but today was just quite difficult to anticipate the issue we were going to face into that corner.
Dry conditions tomorrow, if they're there, and the car's been strong in that. It's a long race, isn't it? Do you think you've got the pace in the car to fight back into the points?
I think we can. We can definitely going forward from where we are, and I feel like potential is there. Of course, the race, there will be so much stuff going on. There will be strategy, everybody can use different tires also, so let's see, but I'm sure it's going to be a very great day tomorrow. And
I'm pretty sure every time you drive past, the crowd cheers. You probably can't hear them from inside, but the support here has been incredible, hasn't it?
Yeah, actually it was a lot more than I expected. I knew there would be a lot of fans, I knew it was going to be packed, but it's great to see them always cheering for you, especially I think under the hard time is where they're there for, but I really felt the extra energy. That's what got me going this weekend. So far it's been great. Of course today a little bit less, but we will make up for it tomorrow.
That's what I wanted to hear, because he's talking about the crowd. That's cool.
And also there's been not criticism, but since Zhou arrived, there was a hope, certainly within the team, that he would, because he's what I would call the closest thing to a paid driver as you can, but they were hoping that a mass of money, and there is a lot of money in China, would come to his way, and someone get behind him and become a personal sponsor that would allow him to, influence and get more money in for the team, and also open up that market. And I do think this weekend could actually be that catalyst that they thought would happen about 3 years ago when he joined Formula One. I think now, with the eyes of the world seeing this and seeing the reception he's getting, that it might just get one of those multimillionaire companies in China to get behind him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, that's me in my delay again. I think you've also got to look at the fact that he's not had the opportunity yet for it to show this, and there's probably been 2 or 3 years of missed opportunity because of the COVID delays, where we would have had this earlier, and he maybe would be a bit more secure in that sense. But you've got to say, on his driving standards, he's actually showing how high quality this field is, isn't he? In terms of, he made it through to SQ3, finished 9th in the sprint, so 1 place outside the point there, and was very, very strong in that under pressure at the start of this weekend. And that's a driver, as you say, that's kind of the closest thing to a paid driver. I mean, I think we look at him and Logan Sargent as 2 where you're like, well, there's commercial reasons here too, but their standard is so high for someone who has that kind of background, or maybe that we can put them in that category, that is massively impressive, actually, about how strong F1 is right now. And the fact that Zhou could lose his seat next year because there are so many talented drivers available, and yet look at what he can do in the car and maybe have this commercial potential as well, I think is just a sign of how strong the whole grid is. So it would be a shame, I think, actually, if he were to drop off. But at the same time, I'm sure plenty of listeners and fans are going, but there's so many other talented drivers that should be in there too. So it's a good problem to have in that sense.
But if you compare him to the guy that took Hamilton to the brink for several years, Bottas, I actually think he's holding his own pretty darn good. Valtteri's not lost any speed. And while the equipment that they've got is not great, or comparatively so, I think Zhou has at least held his own, given Bottas's background, skill, experience compared to Zhou. And I think, you only judge him against their teammates, really, because that's the only way you can. And he's done pretty good.
All right, let's get a break in real quick.
Exactly.
And
I
when
think
we
the
come
way you look at
back,
the driver market,
sorry, Chris. We're going to do this all night.
It's all right.
We got to get a break in. When we come back, we will jump into the sprint and qualifying and talk about all of that and get you ready for the race just after this break. All right, we're still live on YouTube, Facebook.
Hey, Chris, have you been watching Sky Sports coverage?
Some of it. Right now, I'm not. I've just got the world feed on that I always use because you don't get any interruptions. You get to see, just the pictures from the track.
Well,
but
you can tell the wife Rosberg is. Yeah, you can tell the wife Rosberg is a breath of fresh air. He's so good.
He's definitely different.
His insight, it's definitely different. His insight is really good.
His commentary needs probably sharpening up, I think.
Sure.
He doesn't always sound so animated or wanting to talk about the thing that David Cross seems to want him to talk about. But you're right, like some of the insight he's got is great. And I love the way he will just call it as he sees it with drivers, good and bad. He was praising Lewis Hamilton so much throughout most of the weekend.
I thought that was a bit over the top, didn't you?
About what a great he is.
But then he trashed him.
Well, for most of it, I was thinking that. Exactly. Yeah. When he made a mistake in qualifying, he then absolutely trashed him. So
it's the way he did it. He goes, and his brake bias is wrong. Oh, what's he doing? He had the whole brake bias wrong. He knew it was windy. Yeah. Oh my God.
It was really. I love the way he was talking about when Carlos Sainz spun and hit the wall. He was like, why was he still had his foot in it? He still had his foot in it. He was pressing on the gas. It was that I did like. Yeah.
Yeah. I love having pundits like that.
Yeah. Very good on that in that sense. He's I think he was a bit surprised to be out in China and find that not that many people were there. But I think that's a good thing because it's put more weight on him to talk about things. I know it's been, I don't know if they've run it, but they've got that feature on his first win in there. It is a special place for him too. So, he's a really good addition for this weekend, I think.
I agree.
How long we got, Casey? 30 seconds. All right, let's see what's happening on YouTube.
Andrew Popolek.
Andy P's popped in just a bit late to the party. All good. Welcome, Andy. Drew's
it's like me
here?
with my delay, Andy. I'm late to every conversation.
Yeah. Why is it doing that? It doesn't happen when we're doing wheel to wheel. That's weird.
No, I'm not sure. Yeah, really not sure. Might be just because it's going through the studio as well or something.
Maybe so. All right, coming back.
I'll flag things in the chat if I want to jump in.
Hi, this is Karun Chandok, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60 as the official cybersecurity partner of the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. CrowdStrike protects against cyber threats so the team can focus on what matters, their next win. The revolutionary cloud-native unified CrowdStrike Falcon platform harnesses the speed and power of the cloud to protect and defend organizations of all sizes against increasingly complex threats, stopping breaches before they happen. Because on and off the track, the stakes couldn't be higher. A split second can make the difference between victory and defeat. When every second counts, protection shouldn't slow you down. It should fuel your momentum. CrowdStrike, protection at every turn. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. Jonathan, you jumped out right before we came back on the air.
Yao Ming arrived.
And I was like, I didn't know what had happened. I thought there'd been a crash on, somewhere in the pit lane, but it's Yao Ming towering over the crowd there.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, it's funny. I once went I once did the Nike Hoop Heroes in Beijing, and we went to the Great Wall with Penny Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning. But it was the Chinese national team against the NBA, Hoop Heroes. And met a lot of the Chinese, and they're giants, absolute giants.
Well, I'm sure Chris is having FOMO watching the grid.
Yeah, this is my my wheelhouse when it's walking up and down the grid.
Sure.
Although I don't think I'd have gone for an interview with Yao Ming because I would have not, with the mic cable I have, it would not have reached. He is so tall.
John,
and watching him walking around with Stefano Domenicali is quite hilarious.
So you don't know this, but when you were in the booth in Vegas.
Yeah.
So me and various others, but Bob Varsha mainly, we're standing in the paddock, and of course
I saw you guys out in the middle there.
We're doing hits, So we're only on every 3 or 4 minutes, and the lights go on, and you do a quick, welcome to this, whatever. In that whole time, Chris is up and down, up and down, up and down. I was just smiling because it's like I got to finally be in his environment, and it was great.
Yeah, I did walk through there a few times, and it was so weird because it was so wide in Vegas.
Yeah,
it was huge and dark there that night. It was
11 Elvises.
All right, let's talk about the sprint race because there was lots of things to get excited about. Lando Norris on the pole and then throwing that all away because Hamilton bolted right off the line they battled the first turns 1 and 2, and then Hamilton and then of course Lando went off the track there and gave it to Hamilton for the lead. But
it's good work by Hamilton because it was close to being roughhouse, but it was fair.
No, it was great racing. I loved it. And I did look at they show the 0 to 200 stat, and Hamilton was
something ridiculous.
It was 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, so it was like 0 to 120, but it was 5.2 for Hamilton and 5.0 something for Norris. So he had a big, it was obvious why he got there, but there was a lot to get excited about, but I think the excitement went off the rails when Max finally overtook Hamilton and just exploded away. I mean,
13 seconds in 9 laps.
That is crazy. I mean, I looked up, and the first time I looked, it was like a 3-second lead already, and I was like, wait, what? Did something happen?
That tells you everything you need to know about where the 7-time world champion is, where Mercedes is, and the difference between the two of them now.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that is one of the points that needs raising, actually, where you look at who it was that Max was overtaking and pulling away from. And no disrespect to Mercedes, but that's not the second quickest car on the grid right now. So Lewis was doing a great job to lead, but he was leading from Alonso. Once he got clear of Norris, as you say. And I thought that was excellent racing. I think Lando just tried to hang it around the outside too long and lost grip and ended up going even wider than he wanted to. But if it had been Norris in the lead, I think he has a bigger gap ahead of Hamilton by the time Verstappen comes through. And I think by the time then Verstappen gets to Norris, he has to work harder to get past him. And he doesn't have the same pace advantage to disappear up the road. But the comparison was against a Mercedes that just does not look competitive in the dry at all. And I think we saw the true difference between those two cars. But the quicker ones, the Ferrari and the McLaren, were bottled up behind Alonso and Sainz and Perez having that fight. And it meant we didn't actually see kind of that true margin. So I think 13 seconds in 9 laps is, ominous, but it's not really the true picture between Max and the next quickest car. But yeah, it was a big difference, wasn't it, yesterday?
Yeah, and some notable from that race from people finished was, of course, Lando dropping all the way to 6th to finish. He did finish ahead of his teammate, George Russell, in 8th, and Zhou Guanyu. He does have a top 10, let's say, finish in a race under his belt, so he can take that away. Kevin Magnussen looked good in the Haas, finishing 10th, but also Daniel Ricciardo with this new chassis and finishing quite a bit ahead of his teammate, Yuki Tsunoda, because Ricciardo finished 11th.
I made a note after Japan to watch very carefully what happens this weekend for a couple of reasons. One, Daniel has not had the start he needed. The talk of him replacing Perez is disappeared because Perez is performing. And I just thought to myself, could this, on a level playing field, we haven't been here for 5 years, he won this race in 2018 for Red Bull. So I was like, make a note, watch Daniel Ricciardo over the weekend and find out if he does finally outperform Tsunoda. And so far, he has.
Yeah, so far. What else from the sprint race? Let's see. I was just scrolling down. I mean, anything else jump out at you guys? I was going to talk eventually about Logan Sargent because there's a lot to talk about there, but
I'd say Fernando Alonso from that sprint race in terms of the way he was driving was epic for a while, but then he got involved in that incident with Carlos Sainz. And after the race, took a little while to kind of look into it. The stewards did an investigation, but he got a 10-second time penalty, which meant nothing because he'd retired. But he got 3 penalty points on his license for contact with Sainz. And watching the replays, so they go side by side through the fast left-hander at turn 7, and I think Alonso does hit Sainz there.
Yeah.
Very light, but I think he was just a bit overly ambitious trying to carry speed on the inside. And they both continue fine. Sainz has the inside for turn 8, and he runs Alonso wider off the racing line, but doesn't drive him off the track or anything. And he has the high ground. He's ahead. It's kind of a textbook what he's passed him move. And Alonso, I think, was a bit over ambitious to throw it down the inside of the left-hander at turn 9. It just wasn't going to happen. And he hit Sainz there and got a punch himself, damaged Sainz's car. They both went wide. Perez got through. And then that was kind of Alonso's race run. But the contact was so light and it was such hard racing. I wasn't massively surprised to see a penalty, but 3 penalty points felt very severe because that's 25% of a race ban. You add that to his Melbourne penalty, and he's now halfway to being banned for a Grand Prix.
Ooh.
And that's from the last 3 races. So he's got to get through another 21 Grand Prix weekends without having 2 more such incidents or picking up enough 6 penalty points across other incidents. Otherwise, he's going to get banned. And I just find that remarkable.
Yeah, I do too. And you're right. All those incidents that we were discussing just seemed like great racing to me. Sure, he came off with a puncture, but that's what we want to see. Is some really close racing like that, and his ability to run at those speeds, that close quarters, is what Alonso's all about.
Yeah, no doubt. All right,
yeah, absolutely.
Let's shift to qualifying because it was getting pretty interesting in qualifying as well. And Max, of course, obliterating everybody in qualifying again. In fact, we have a clip from Max Verstappen that I want to play after, and this is right after qualifying. So, Casey, if we got that queued up, let's hear from Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I think in general the whole qualifying, it went really well. A few changes that we made to the car definitely made it a bit nicer to drive for me. And then Q3, of course, you go all out and you really try to put the best lap out there. And it felt good. It was with the wind, it was quite tricky today in some places to be very consistent, but overall in Q3, I think with the gap that we had to the cars behind, we definitely can't complain.
How are you feeling about tomorrow? All you've got, I guess, is the data that you really got from this morning. It's a long afternoon. What you're expecting?
Yeah, we should be quick normally, but I also know that after a sprint, a lot of people can analyze more what they are doing, what we are doing. So naturally, I think the gaps will become a bit smaller. But I'm still very confident, of course, that we can have a good race.
And he looks so crazy relaxed, and obviously he should, but it's amazing, really. He just looks.
It's lovely.
It is lovely. But yeah, he just is crazy relaxed, and those interviews, he just, you can tell he's relishing every moment. He just seems like there's no competition at all. You can tell that he's just, racing as fast as he wants to
be
go.
honest, it does remind me, here we are at Shanghai. It reminds me of Michael Schumacher in his heyday, because there really was there was a couple of years there where he could do no wrong, and he just looked like he was. The rest of the field were just showing up to his party. And that's kind of where we are now. And unless we forget, I know. We all want competition. We want a little bit of jeopardy. But if you're a real purist, this is what the guy was born and built to do just this. For him not to perform at this level with the equipment he's got would be even more annoying, actually. If you get throwing it down the road or making mistakes, he would never be, you'd never be in awe of him the way he is. It's his sort of metronomic ability each and every week to keep doing it at this level. And Chris was talking about how close Formula One is at the moment. I think that it's also a testament to how far ahead he is in this field.
Absolutely. It's the way that Max it kind of feels inevitable, doesn't it? That he's always going to pull it out. Whereas if you look at Checo, who has won races, we've seen when he can be really, really strong, but how rare it is that he puts in performances that puts him clear of everyone else. He was pretty solid yesterday, just over 1.5 tenths ahead of the rest of the field, Checo, but that gap to Max is over 3 tenths. And I think that is naturally what you're seeing in terms of the performance difference. So when you reach Formula One level and you're talking ideally the 20 best drivers in the world, or certainly close to it, and between two teammates, you kind of accept, I reckon, Verstappen's got 3 tenths in performance, in pace over Perez. That shows just, how immensely talented Verstappen is and how good he is. It's obviously the best when we get 2 or 3 drivers of such standing able to fight against each other, either in the same team or with fairly similar machinery.
Yeah, you mentioned Checo, of course. I feel like I put in my notes, Checo feels like he has his mojo back. And look, he's had, in the first 4 races, he's had 3 P2 finishes. So he's clearly doing something right. And he sounds like that he's got his mojo back. Let's hear from Checo.
Yeah, considering the mess of a quali I had, I nearly got knocked out in Q1. Given the margins are so close, a little off, not having that perfect lap in Q1. I did my lap then with very warm tires. And then I couldn't get a good read through qualifying. We did a lot of setup changes to adjust accordingly, and unfortunately they were not enough.
How are you feeling about the race tomorrow? It feels like you've been on it all weekend. Solid kind of P2 and then going for the win? Yeah, definitely. I think we had really good pace this morning. The degradation behaved well, so we should be able to be strong for tomorrow. Good luck.
If you're watching on YouTube, you see a picture of Checo with a big smile on his face. And I don't think I saw that in that expression the entirety of last year.
He's a different man, there's no question. And he started as we hoped he would, which is, like you say, the mojo back. And there's no question that he is playing the role of a Eddie Irvine, a Barrichello, a brilliant number 2 at the moment. And that's all they can ask from him. And interestingly, all the talk of Ricciardo going back to Red Bull seems to have dissipated.
Yeah. All right, guys, just looked at the clock. We need to sneak a break in. We'll be back after these messages with about 10 minutes to the race. Listen to Speed City, back after these messages. Andy P says, thoughts on the tweak to the sprint format. I enjoy the Friday night sprint. It makes the whole weekend work better. Yeah, Andy, we touched on this, but I agree. I mean, it works better for the flow. And, I know China's crazy for us here in the United States. But
Andy, I'll give you my thoughts. Get rid of it. Build from Friday. I don't care whether you shorten it to a 2-day race, but you've got to build from FP1 all the way to the race. Otherwise, there's no crescendo. It's stuttified. It's stilted.
I get that. I understand that. I certainly understand why F1 does it because, I think that they're talking about it.
But Chris's point at the beginning of the show was exactly right. You can shoot yourself in the foot if the sprint race is processional, or at least
yeah, true. Who else is out there talking? Kevin Kelly says Pirelli says it's a 2-stopper, medium, hard, medium. Where Chris is going to talk about that. Man, there's a shot from the drone or the chopper, I guess, of the stadium. The chopper.
The chopper.
Cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks cool. It looks very cool. All right, let's test the delay, Chris. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing 1, 2, 3. I think it's a little bit.
It's definitely better.
Looking at my
way
thing.
Better.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it developed because it felt like it wasn't a problem when we started. So
I've seen Zoom do that.
If it does it again, if it does it again, I'll just keep jumping out in each break.
It feels like an elastic band. We're almost out of time.
By the way,
show
add
here.
to our email the equipment for Chris?
Yes. Chris, well, now that you're back home, I forgot about that. We need to jump back on that. So
we'll do that tomorrow,
yeah? Make that work.
That would be great.
Sounds good.
Let's see what we got. I want to talk tires, Chris, like Kevin Kelly just did. Coming back.
Sure. Yeah, I'll race through that for you guys.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
The Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. All right, we had some folks on YouTube asking about tire strategy. And Chris, you said you are ready to talk tires.
I am indeed. I saw Mario Isola walking around on the grid on the world feed, and I was like, I'm gonna have to do my best Italian accent for this, aren't I? To be him, because normally I just ask him to explain it. But I think it was Kevin Kelly asked if it was going to be a two-stop, and he's right. It very much looks like a two-stop race, especially with the high deg we saw yesterday in the sprint, and we've had some rain that obviously washed a load of the grip away on Friday as well. So it's going to be high deg again today, expected. Probably most people starting on the medium tire. Looks like a 14 to 20 lap first stint, and then you can either go, well, you basically will go to the hard tire for the second stint, but you can either run hard tire and then medium tire for the final stint. That seems to be the quickest route, so medium, hard, medium, or you can go medium, hard, hard. But for anyone going medium, hard, hard, you need 2 sets of hard tires available, and not many have that. At the front, Red Bull have that. Both Verstappen and Perez have 2 sets of new hard tires. They haven't run them at all yet, so they'll be learning about them if they do use them. The same for Ferrari. Leclerc and Sainz have 2 new sets of hards. So of the front runners, that's the most likely 2 teams that will run medium, hard, hard. Otherwise, medium, hard, medium, you're looking at Mercedes look likely to do that. Certainly with Russell, he has 2 new sets of mediums. Leclerc also has 2 sets of mediums, so he can choose, essentially. It depends how the middle stint goes, and he can make a choice. So he's well placed in terms of strategy. And then at McLaren, they've got used sets of mediums that they'd have to turn to, but they've only got 1 set of the hard tyres. So Aston Martin, they have 2 new sets of mediums, so they can run those as well. So that's the most likely is going to be medium, hard, medium, or medium, hard, hard, depending on what's available. But you could start on the soft or finish on the soft. It's not impossible. Either way, if you start on the soft, you probably run the hard tyre twice because you need the longer stints. If you start on the medium and have a good middle stint on the hard, you could maybe go to the soft at the end. Lewis Hamilton will be the one to watch with this. He has 4 new sets of soft tyres to use if he wants, because obviously he dropped out of qualifying so early, unexpectedly. So I think that might be one that starts on the soft at the back to go aggressive, make an early stop, having hopefully made some positions, and then run long on the hard tyre in clear air. That will be Mercedes' plan, I think, if they use that. So we'll keep an eye out for, I should be able to just shout who's on what tyre, hopefully, before we go off air. But for anyone who wants to know what the importance is, if you start on the hard tyre, which no one will do, you lose 8 meters between going from 0 to 150 kilometers.
Wow.
That's a lot.
An hour. You lose over 8 meters compared to the soft tyre. On the medium, you lose nearly 4 meters compared to the soft. Now, that's more than the car length. So that's why it's always the softer tyre that people are using.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
Hey, you talked about Lewis Hamilton, obviously starting way back, but I was looking at some of the stats for Mercedes. No top 4s in the first 4 Grand Prix for the first time since 2011.
Yeah.
Hamilton's one of his worst starts to a season. No top 6 in this season. How does this happen to the mighty Mercedes?
I know.
To not figure out the ground effect era. It's just, it's really stunning to me. But hey, guys, I want to talk about something before in the pre-show, because I know it's going to be so late. We may not get people in the post-show, and that is the Mario Andretti story that hit, because Mario was out in California for the IndyCar stuff, and the headline is Mario offended by F1 rejection, and he says, "If they want blood, well, I'm ready." And I was like, wow. I read that and I was just like, and then there's several little lines in here that I want to read what Mario said. He said, to talk about one of the F1's claim that it did not believe Andretti would be competitive, right? And so his response was, I was offended, actually. I don't think we deserve that, to be honest with you. He says, it's a big investment in the series, and you'd think they'd welcome that. Even the value of the series is more valuable with 11 teams than 10. So I don't know. Tell us what's wrong. And then when he was responding to, he says, as for questioning F1 questioning GM's ability to provide an engine for a new team, also asked to find GM. He said he took exception. He said, that's another offensive statement. We're the ones that worked it out, and GM said over and over, Andretti or nothing, and then F1 still tried to take it.
Yeah, they did.
He said
that's the worst part of this story.
Yeah.
Is that they were willing to dispense with the Andrettis in favor of GM.
Who else can work with GM besides Andretti?
Yeah.
And then he says there's an undercurrent here that I don't understand, quite honestly, but if they want blood, well, I'm ready. And then the follow-up to that was Jenna Fryer was the reporter. She asked him something about an attorney. Are they getting people involved? And apparently he just smiled and didn't say anything, but the look on his face was like,
don't mess with Uncle Mario.
Man, that's been my experience working with him.
I'd like to get Chris's take on this, because it does feel like there is, I don't know, something in the water, like he says. I get why they feel hard done by.
I totally agree on the GM part.
Yeah,
I totally agree on the GM part that Formula One kind of trying to court GM in some way, shape, or form, and other teams almost hinting at it. James Vowles didn't he, at one stage?
Yeah.
Said they'd be a great partner to work with if they do come in, and that GM have never said, "Oh, we want to enter F1 as it is." They said we want to enter with Andretti.
Yeah.
And I do think that understandably offensive towards Andretti. That the other reasons I sort of get it in the sense that Formula One just doesn't feel like it's ready right now to add another team. It wants to work on things that maybe just appease everybody better, the existing grid. Some of those things do take time to work through, but there just has been a pushback that seems overly severe and not collaborative from Formula One's point of view.
Yeah.
I don't think you're getting a better opportunity for a new team than you currently have. So I think Andretti should have been welcomed with open arms in terms of, we want to make this work, let's work together, instead of very standoffish between F1 and Andretti.
Yeah, and Liberty Media have worked so hard on Vegas, on Miami, on Austin to continue their success and grow the sport. We always mention we always mention Drive to Survive, not that they're, but you've got to use these catalysts to grow your sport. And it seems on the one hand you've got all of this positive fan power, and then you're not going to give them the one thing they want, which is an American team and the guarantee of an American driver.
And the clear ability to raise money. Look how much money they're spending. They've got this 600,000 square foot new headquarters in Indiana, and then another 50,000 square foot space they just opened in Silverstone. And if I read that right, Chris, you may know better, but it said that this is our building. Like, they bought the building, not just leasing space. So, I mean, the fact that
they've done a lot of work there.
Yeah, and the fact that they can raise all this money and get GM, it's like they've done everything they have been asked. But guys, we're about 90 seconds, so let's get our picks in, and then Chris, you can check on the tires. Jonathan, let's get your picks.
Oh, I'm gonna go with Verstappen, Norris, Sainz.
Okay. Chris?
I'm going to go Verstappen, Perez, Sainz. Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc. But I've just seen Verstappen say there might be a few drizzles right now.
Ooh.
Doesn't look like there's a lot of rain on the radar, but he seems to be hinting that there might be a few spots of rain. So that could spice things up as well.
Okay, I was going to go Verstappen, Checo, and Lando. I'm sticking with Verstappen for the obvious reason. Checo's already had 3 second place finishes. Why not? So
you're going Lando third?
Yeah, Lando third. Chris, we got 30 seconds. Anything on tires?
I've got the race start compounds for everyone. Mediums for everyone in the top 10. Then you got Stroll in 11th on new soft tires. I said Lewis Hamilton will go for softs, and he has. So 18th, 19th, and pit lane start for Logan Sargent. So Hamilton, Tsunoda, and Sargent all on softs. Kevin Magnussen on hards, the only other one, from 17th. So keep an eye on him as well.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into the pre-race. Stay tuned right here for the race. And then if you're still awake, join us for the post-race. Thanks, everybody.